Hello, this is CJ Sorensen. Welcome to CJ's Chat Box. Today I'm going to do something a little bit different. Normally I interview people that live in the village, but today I am going to speak and interview someone that doesn't live in the village, but he's a big visitor here. He has been on TV6 3 times already because what he's talking about is vitally important, and I'm really happy that he could make it today. So welcome, Nick Jordan.
Thank you, CJ. It's great to be here.
Yes, it is. The first time that I want to know a little bit about, because what attracted me when I first met you at TV6, you were there to do Good Day OC with Amy and Lauren, but I heard your accent. And at that time I was doing makeup. So of course the accent said, Nick, you got to come in here so I can do you up. So you did, and we got to be friends. And as we were walking into the parking lot and we're leaving, and I said, as it would turn out, at church the next night, we were having our missionary from Uganda. So I thought, oh my goodness sakes, you should come. So you came and you just sat, and just when Pastor Leland introduced you, you just stood up and turned around like that, but you didn't speak. So I think miracles happened that night. But I want to go back a little bit as to, you came from Ireland, and why did you come to America? What drew you here? And a little bit after, when you got here, what happened?
Sure. I'm an immigrant, as many before me were. I was a school teacher of 3rd and 4th grade children. Really loved it. It's a terrific profession. I was born on a farm in the late 50s, and farming in the late 50s in Ireland was pretty difficult, and it still is in many places. But what was interesting in the light of this present conversation is that farm did not have a water well, did not have running water. So my mother would have to walk to a well about half a mile away from the farm, and she would haul water every day. And as a little boy, about 4 years old, I have a vivid memory of walking alongside her. And it's funny how a memory gets implanted into your mind, and then life moves along, and many decades later it pops up and it has a purpose, and that's obviously what happened for me. But
and
I did
also, being that age, the younger you are, the more those images just stick.
Especially if you're doing something with your mom, because we all know how close we are to our moms and how important a role a mom plays in our lives. So many decades later, I emigrated to America because I heard that the streets were lined with gold and that there was a big welcoming committee waiting at the airport, and that everybody would open doors, and the American dream was readily available. At least that's what I heard. I thought I heard. And of course, that didn't actually happen. I did emigrate. I actually emigrated to Texas. And for an Irish boy coming from a small farm where in Ireland it rains a lot and there is no humidity, to arrive in Houston, Texas in May of 1986 was a rude awakening to my white Irish body.
Yes.
I learned about humidity. I learned about temperatures that were off the charts. But it was an amazing first introduction to America. That was 1986.
And then you moved from there. When did you go to California then? Did you stay in Texas a long time?
I did. I stayed in Texas 1 year, as a matter of fact. And as a result of the dropping of the price of oil, I knew I needed to move further west. And I believe many before me moved west. And so I came to California. And this is where I think the story gets quite interesting. I had only one phone number and one contact in all of California, and that was given to me by a dear friend, a teaching colleague, who had been out here on her honeymoon. Now, that contact number turned out to be very important, and I can tell you who it was, because many people here in the village will know of this family. It's the O'Connor family, and the O'Connor family from Laguna located on
right there on
Alicia
Moulton.
Parkway.
Yeah,
right.
Moulton. There's
Okay.
one. Oh no, O'Connor is on. Yes, O'Connor
Correct,
is on
on
Alicia.
Alicia Park.
Yeah.
So Joe and Jane O'Connor received the, I'm sure, thrilling information that they were going to have an Irish house guest for a little while.
Oh.
You know, us Irish immigrants were very bold sometimes.
Yes.
We're not afraid to try and open doors for ourselves.
Yeah.
So Joe and Jane invited me. I actually stayed at the mortuary, which is getting really close, I believe, to the village here. And so that was the beginning of my life in California, starting out here essentially at Alicia Parkway, just down the street.
But how did you get into? Did you go to real estate school, or did you already have that knowledge, or how did you end up starting to sell real estate then? Where did that happen?
Well, looking back, it all seems like it made perfect sense. But back then, I think as an immigrant, I probably worked at every possible job that you could work at.
Okay.
I believe I sold skylights. I know I worked as a waiter in a few places, and I wasn't very good at it.
Mhm.
Everybody loved the accent, but nobody could get their food, so that didn't work out very well. I also was a driver for a hearse company, which is O'Connor's.
Mhm.
And I was just toward the end of my stay here, realizing that I wasn't making any money.
Mhm.
My poor parents were telling me that I really needed to have my head examined,
Mm.
that there was no reason for me to be here, having given up a wonderful teaching job in Ireland,
Yeah.
being the oldest of 5 children.
Mhm.
So a good friend here said, if you really want to make it in America,
Mhm.
you need 2 things. You need to work for yourself, and you need to get into real estate.
Oh boy.
And it turned out to be wonderful advice, because in 1982, I did my real estate license. I started working in real estate. I worked for another individual broker for about 5 years in Irvine area. And then I started my own company in beautiful Laguna Beach.
Mhm.
And obviously I had found my own very nice version of the American dream. I had bought a home in beautiful Laguna Beach
Mhm.
and started my real estate company there. And in 1999, I put my shingle out, as they call it, and I pretty much thought, and I was able to say with some conviction, that I had made it here in America.
Yeah.
An overnight success after only 12 years.
Yeah. Right. So you were already then established in Laguna Beach, and you did quite well at selling real estate. But then something happened. So why don't you tell us what happened?
Well, this is the sad part where, Carmen might have to cue in a few violins, because, the sad story is always obviously a sad story.
Yeah.
So in 2007, we had a really bad real estate recession.
Mhm.
And I'm sure many people have memories of it, because everybody has their own memory.
Mhm.
Well, mine was particularly bad because right at the same time in 2007, my marriage ended.
Mm.
And the two of those events combined left me falling from here all the way down to here.
Mm.
I was absolutely devastated. Everything that I thought I had achieved was almost wiped out overnight. Emotionally, it was the most difficult time.
Mhm.
I do have to say that it was also, I believe, a pivotal moment in my life, because that was really when I realized that I couldn't make it through on my own.
Mm.
Up to then, I didn't really have an awful lot of space, for God in my life,
Okay.
because it was all filled up with my own ego and success,
Mhm.
and thinking that, I could do it on my own.
Mhm.
In 2007, I found out that that was not going to happen. And I essentially really came to faith and decided that I was going to surrender my life
Mhm.
to the Lord
Okay.
and ask Him to direct me in whatever way He wanted.
Okay. So therefore, did he point to Uganda, or how did he go
No,
about
it
doing
wasn't.
that?
It wasn't either as immediate or quite as that. I think he pointed first of all to church, and I believe he wanted me to start at the entry level.
Right.
So for about a year, I attended church and really started to develop a personal relationship with the Lord.
Yeah.
And it was through that I listened for the first time. And what I heard was that you need to go to Uganda. You need to see some of the 4 schools that you've helped raise funds for.
Mm.
Because in the last 4 years of my real estate business, I had actually had fundraisers down at the Montage in Laguna Beach.
Mhm.
And we had raised the funds for 4 schools in Uganda.
Okay.
Not ever having been to Uganda,
Okay.
I realized that it would be a good time to actually go and see what had come of these. And again, with the real estate recession, I had the time. I wasn't very busy,
Yes.
and I realized that it was ready. I was ready to make a trip.
So you went. You know what's interesting too is the fact that you were giving money, as you said, to schools that you've never been there to check out. So for you to, I mean, this is why sometimes people get a little bit leery of,
Yes.
of charitable things. Is the money really going there?
Absolutely.
So therefore, you're taking that trip there, and what you experienced there, I think, shocked you more than anything to see what was happening there. So tell us a little bit about what you first experienced there in Uganda.
Well, first of all, I went for the very reason that you actually spoke of. People would ask me, so how many times have you been to Uganda? How are the schools doing? Can you bring me a photograph back? And I started to slowly feel, oh dear, this is really serious, because what if the schools aren't there or as successful as I believed they were? Then I realized that just what you said, there are many horror stories of people giving money with an open heart and finding out to their shock and horror that the funds didn't do what they were supposed to do. So yes, in 2008, I went to Uganda, and I was shocked in a manner that I was ill prepared for. Now, we've all seen pictures of poverty. We know what it looks like in a book. Maybe we've even seen it on a TV screen. But when you actually go and come up close and personal to those that are suffering, to children that have runny noses, that have terrible diarrhea, that result from the lack of water, and you see mothers that are hauling water, all it did for me was that it really quieted all the thoughts that I had in my head about my own upset, about my own suffering, about, oh, how poor is my life, how sad that I've lost everything. All of those thoughts got pushed way to the side. And I was confronted with hardship and suffering and poverty for the first time in my life. Now, I could actually see it with my eyes. I could hear it with my ears. And I could literally smell poverty with my nostrils, which is a very substantial attack on a person who hasn't had any experience. Remember, I lived in Laguna Beach. I lived the nice life. Comfort was there in abundance. I find myself in a country that has 41 million people, and there are 18 million people in Uganda lacking water. Now, I drive through the countryside, very few paved roads, and I see for the first time that this water that I used in abundance in a shower, in a faucet, in the bathroom, that I never even gave a single thought about, was the most precious commodity that existed in the lives of people that I was seeing and visiting.
Yes. I saw some of the, and again, I've seen pictures of it. I've seen it on TV and documentaries, and it's horrific to see that. And one of the things I saw in one of your clips from being over there was that you followed them to go get the water with their old containers, plastic containers, and expecting that they were going to go someplace where they would get fresh water. And then you see them getting water out of something that no one should ever drink. I mean, it was just that to me, and I know that happens in many countries, and we don't think about the fact that that lovely glass of water, we don't like to drink water out of the tap because God forbid there should be something. And these people are drinking water out of just a pond or a river that is just that to me, when I see that and how we take it for granted, as you say, that how they even exist, if their bodies have become used to all of that bacteria and all the germs that are in there, I don't know how they fight better.
Well, let me maybe explain for a moment on that, because what actually happens, and you're right, the water that is hauled comes from surface streams, from stagnant ponds, where essentially the person going to fetch the water has to shoo away the animals. Now, some of the animals are oxen, and some of them are a little bit more up the food chain, you can meet a lion or a tiger that is probably going to win the argument
Yes.
when it comes to getting water. So that water is typically hauled and it weighs heavily. It's 8 pounds per gallon. So 5 gallons of water weighs 40 pounds. A mother's going to pour that water, which sometimes looks like soup, into a jerry can, and she's going to place that on her head. Now, I've had many opportunities to meet very strong men, and none of them would be able to do what a mother in Uganda does. So the water that is filthy and dirty is essentially full of disease. Now, what actually happens is that the majority of children who attend school, all of them are mildly sick. They have low-grade fevers. Now, I don't have to tell anybody here in the village what it's like to have a cold, what it's like to have the flu, and maybe what it's like to have had COVID.
Right.
That's just an attack on your system that makes you feel really yucky. That's what young children have to live with and deal with, and what mothers have to accept every day of their lives, just because I was going to say there's no water, but that would be incorrect. Because there's nobody there that's able to bring the water to the surface and provide it to them. Because, CJ, water is often available 50 feet underneath the very ground where families suffer, where children die, where older people essentially live their entire life having never seen water in their village. It is really what I could consider to be one of the most tragic events that you can see that doesn't have to be that way.
Right. And I know that one of the things that you mentioned when you visited there first is when you visited the schools, you said, why are there no girls in school? And they said, well, because they are out carrying water. So therefore, the boys are in the classroom, but not the girls. So that was another thing that you thought, now, because of building the wells, the girls are going to be educated. They are not out carrying water. They are being educated along with the boys. So I think that just how soon, and then also whatever the thought came to mind, like, how can I change this? How can I help this? And then to make all that happen, because to me, I never think much about the mechanics of it, where you have to hire someone to find out where the water is and who's going to dig it and what kind of, all that stuff that is going to cost money, but you also have to know the right kind of people, so they're not going to do something that, again, it's not reputable, that they're going to take the money and run. How did you find all that?
Well, that's a great question, because in 2009, when I returned to the United States, I knew that much about water, about hydrology, about drilling, about wells, about drill bits, etc. But the modern world today is amazing, because you can find out anything with a good Google search in about 15 minutes. And so in 2009, I started asking questions. What do we need to do? How do we do it? How do I get a drilling rig? How do I hire a hydrologist? So what actually happened? Now, it didn't happen overnight. I just want to say this, because when I came back from Uganda, came back to what I thought was going to be my normal life, but it couldn't be normal again because of what I'd seen. For the first 6 months, I tried to convince myself that, this was an experience that was very sad, but I had done my part. Look, I had raised funds for 4 schools. Hey, I was a good guy. I had done more than most. I'd like to get back to my real estate career and rebuild what I had lost. When I closed my eyes at night, all I could visualize was the faces of little children suffering. I had photographs that I had taken during my trip of 3 or 4 little ones that had really befriended me. They had, they had no fear. They had, the ability to run up and to hold your hand. And I suppose in many ways, they became the ambassadors for what was the need. And I could not get them out of my mind. And try as I must, and try as I did back then, I realized this was not going to happen. This trip had made an indelible mark I think on my heart,
Yeah.
you can get a lot of things out of your mind.
Right.
But if something captures your heart,
Yeah.
it's very, very difficult.
Yeah.
So what happened was this. I realized that I could do something about the challenge that existed there for water.
Okay.
Look, I was a successful real estate person. The sales ability that I had in abundance that allowed me to build a substantial real estate company. I said, look, what if I directed that determination, let's just call it, to building a company that could inspire people to be part of the solution to the problem of lack of water. And that essentially was what the founding of Wells of Life looked like. A very modest beginning.
Right.
And all of that research allowed me to figure out that you could buy a drilling rig. The charity that actually had built the schools agreed that they would work together with me. If I raised the funds for the wells, they would purchase the drilling rig and essentially go back to every single school that we had visited where they had built a school, and we would ensure that we would put a water well at every single location. Because, again, as you said, I was not prepared when I saw classrooms that had less girls than boys. I just thought this was the way things were. And, you should never accept the way things are. Yeah. You should always question. And the question I asked was, are there just more boys than girls in Uganda? And the answer was exactly what you alluded to. No, when there's no water, the young girl is going to be with her mother, walking down that brown clay path. Her dreams are going to be crushed underneath her feet. She will not receive an education. She will follow into that same cycle of poverty that her mother and her mother before her have gone through. And that, to me, in a time where everybody is talking about social justice, everybody is talking about a level playing field, that to me became a fight worth fighting. To be able to lift young girls up out of total and complete abject poverty to where they could receive an education. And I have to tell you, CJ, when a young lady goes to school with that opportunity, she becomes an amazing student. You literally, before your eyes, you see her determination push her through. And that's where the future of Uganda and every other country exists, in those young people receiving an education, all relating back to providing the gift of water.
Well, and the thing that it comes evident that you have a God-given talent to sell, because when you decided to take this on, you had to sell people to get involved in it. So therefore, your passion for what you saw and what you want to do, it was easy for you to be able, or easier than most, to say, I think this is something worth doing. And you were able to sell that idea at that particular time to so many people. And I know that it's grown over the years. How many years totally has Wells of Life been in existence?
Well, I count the starting date as our first well, number one. So that was the 10th of February, 2010. So we're, I believe, in February, that's 12 years. And each year we have grown. We have never had a down year. We have grown in the number of wells each and every year that has passed. We've gained more knowledge. We have now a staff of 18 that work in Uganda. We are also approved as a charity or an NGO in Ireland. So we're working across 3 continents, bringing water on a daily basis. And, I really want to point out that, every area here that we've dealt with has risen to the challenge. Meeting you was quite an experience because, again, I don't think were expecting an Irishman to walk into your makeup room.
No,
all right.
hardly,
And I wasn't expecting to meet a very effervescent lady that said, what do you do? I was expecting to get a little makeup on my nose to keep my red face at bay. And what happened there was the introduction to Channel 6, to TV6, to speaking to the village, to getting an invitation to the Lutheran Church of the Cross. And all I want to say is that the generosity that exploded and overflowed was almost like a river or a spring coming to the surface. And, going to the congregation of the Lutheran Church of the Cross was one of the most joyful experiences because, like you said, I didn't ask for a donation. I didn't ask for anything. But what happened was
Mhm.
that people saw that this is a cause that they could support,
Mhm.
that this is a problem that they could solve. And since that humble beginning,
Yeah.
8,000 people this morning received the gift of water in Uganda because of donations and commitments from the village
Mhm.
that candidly all go back to you
Right.
opening the door.
God is good. He does things with us that we aren't always aware of. And I think that what surprised me, again, back to the first time that I met you and then invited you to come to church the following day, and then you just standing up, and all Pastor Leland did was say, "This is Nick, Jordan, a friend of Constance that has wells of life. He builds wells, and that was it.
Yes.
You never said a word. So when the service ended and you walked out, and I walked out there with you, two people sitting there in the audience in the congregation wrote you a check for a well.
Correct.
Each one wrote a check for the well,
Right.
which shocked you, shocked me, and shocked everyone about the fact that they felt that need and commitment that they could. And since then, of course, one of the couples has bought quite a few wells,
Right.
and so they believe in it very strongly, and to feel that they have that they can do something, even if they're not going to go over there and experience that, they know. And you're so good about letting us know via videos, Facebook, etc. And I know you're going to be coming back next month to visit us at Lutheran Church of the Cross. So, and then tell us just a little bit about St. Nick's also, because Sister Joan?
Sister Joan Hogan found out in a similar way. I happened to have a chance meeting with her about 5 years ago. She's given me special permission to mention her age. I would never mention a lady's age without permission.
Yeah.
But Sister Joan Hogan is a very sprightly 87 years old. Now, you'd never know it because you know what? The joy of life does not respect age, as so many people here have proven.
Yeah.
But Sister Joan began learning about wells of life. She asked me if she could travel to Uganda. And of course, what could I possibly say? Having been raised Catholic, having been taught by the nuns, I mean, we have it imprinted upon our minds that if you say no to a sister of the religious order, not good things may happen.
Right.
So Sister Joan came to Uganda with me and the team. And what happened there is really her story. But I can just simply say this, that she came back to the United States a changed person. She came back and she said to me, "Nick, I'm going to give the rest of my life, whatever number of years or months or days the Lord appoints to me, to speaking on behalf of the children and on the mothers and the families of those in Uganda who need water."
Okay.
Now, she speaks to many churches. In fact, she was at St. Nick's, as you pointed out.
Yeah.
And I believe she received an outpouring of support that added up to 3 wells.
Wow.
I mean, this is an incredible human being that herself stands before and speaks at 5 masses. And no matter what I say to her, asking her to slow down, she says, no.
Yeah.
They need me, and they need me to pass out the information. And I want to be called home, telling the Lord, one more well, Lord, just one more well. I mean, what a way to live your what do we say, your twilight years,
winter years,
the fourth quarter of your life. And, that's a theme that runs through Wells of Life, because this is not just work that people do. This is a passionate movement that those of us that are dedicated to it realize that we are changing the world in a wonderful way for what will soon be 1 million people.
Wow.
Oh, yes.
Wow.
In, I think, what might have been a crazy moment when I stood by the source of the Nile in Jinja, laying the foundation stone of what was to become my sister's memorial school, I heard that little still voice that many of us here know all about. I heard that voice that said, "You need to bring water to my little ones." And that is a message that I took pretty seriously, because I know that it is well and clearly written in the Gospel of Matthew that when you bring water, in my name,
Yeah.
you surely will not lose your reward.
Yeah.
And so a commitment to bring water to 1,000 communities and 1 million people back then seemed totally ridiculous, unachievable, and maybe even a little crazy.
Yeah.
But at the end of this year, we will have a mother and her daughter come to America, to California, to our big gala
Right.
that will take place in November, and they will represent the 1 millionth person
for
with
heaven's
water
sakes.
after, I guess, 12 years.
12 years.
So
Yeah.
thanks to the generosity here in the village and in villages everywhere across America, from Ohio to Florida to New York to California to Wisconsin, we are active in probably 15 states. Never underestimate what can be done when people become passionate about a movement.
Yeah.
And
I think that's the key word there, is passionate. Is
Right.
that we live in a society where we're not too passionate about anything, but when you become passionate about something and you get others on board with you that have the same passion, miracles can happen for sure. And one of the things that I want to mention that I saw at your last time on TV6 that kind of struck me was a little bit more. You talked a little bit more about the whole finding the well and so on, which I didn't hear. But then you said there's 3 ways. You said 3 ways that you can help or be a part of wells of life, and the fact that you can write a check for a well, you can use some of your stocks, savings, whatever, for a well,
Right.
or you can leave it as some part of your will.
Right.
And all that's what hit me, I guess, is because I finally have filled out a living trust. But to me, one of the things is like, well, just think about that. When people, when they pass, most people now are cremated,
Right.
but even then they have markers and they have, tombstones and everything, which, and coffins and what have you, because, and that's costly. And to me, it's like, I never go visit somebody because they're gone anyway. So why would I go and pay a lot of money on a tombstone with an engraving of when I lived, nice lady, whatever, when I lived and when I died and so on. But the idea that I could have a plaque like you have when you buy a well, when you have a well, with that being inscribed, that it's a living water, it's a living legacy that you can give.
Right.
And of course, knowing that I can, know that, again, the money that I give you, that anyone gives you, goes to the well.
Right.
So the question then would be, okay, then who pays your employees? How is that done?
Right.
Because there are certain charities that I don't give any money to because I know that 90% or 85% goes to administration.
Right.
Very little goes to the cancer research or whatever.
Right.
So how do you pay for your employees then if all the money's going to the well?
Well, that's the question I've been asked on countless occasions, and the answer is always the same, because I would be the first to say that, we live today in a skeptical world.
Yes.
And quite frankly, for good reason, because many other charities have made it difficult for a charity to be able to do the work and receive the support of the community. So when I founded Wells of Life, I decided the best thing to do would be to remove any doubt as to how much money was going to be used from a donation. Now, let me just put the numbers on the table here. A new well costs $8,000, brings water to 1,000 people. Effectively, that's $8 per person for up to 25 years. A restored well costs $4,000, brings water to the same amount of people, 1,000 people. So for $4, you can bring water to a human being for 25 years. 100% of the funds donated to a well are used for that purpose only. Drilling the well, maintaining the well, and repairing the well. Now, there is another reality, which is overhead.
Right.
I don't work for free. I actually like food with my meals, and I have several commitments each month that include a mortgage. Yeah. So we raise our overhead separate and apart. And about 6 years ago, I decided that I could not speak to 500 people, but I could speak to 50 people. So we created what we call our legacy donor gift. Our legacy donors make a 5-year commitment of $5,000 to $50,000 per year over 5 years. So that would be a $25,000 to $250,000 total gift over 5 years. And that's what runs the majority of Wells of Life. Now, like any organization, we are completely dependent on the generosity of those that see that this is a worthwhile cause. And that brings me to be able to just segue into the three. Actually, I came up with a fourth one that I'm going to share with you today and share with everybody in the village, because I'd like to make things simple. You know, we don't want to confuse anybody here. So here are the 4 ways that you can help Wells of Life.
Okay.
One, the new one is very simple. You can be a monthly giver. And it starts out with as little as $1 a day.
Okay.
Now, let's face it, we all can agree that everybody could, with a little sacrifice, afford $1 a day. So a $30, $60, or $90 a month commitment essentially helps run Wells of Life. And those all add up to really make a huge difference. So a monthly giver, you basically put it on your credit card or you put it through your checking account, and hopefully you forget about it and it comes out every month and it makes a difference. The second one, it's always scary to talk about the stock market, because just in case it's not having a good day, you know, the viewers might say, well, you know, I can't do anything with my stocks. Well, you can, because the last 12 years, there's been a 400% increase in the value of stocks. And most people have stocks in their portfolio. We can receive a gift of shares of stock. If you happen to be fortunate enough to have either Netflix or Amazon or any of the really big ones, even 10 shares simply sent through your brokerage to ours, that can make a huge difference. You know, I have to be totally transparent with you here, CJ, and I got to tell you something that probably not everybody would know. In fact, most people here in the village won't know this. But last year I was diagnosed with cancer. And it was, unfortunately, stage 4 colon cancer. Now, there's a reason there's not stage 5. So I think just to put this on the table, I was 62 years old, never sick a day in my life, a relatively fit guy that likes to hike and stay fit. I got that shocking news, and it really brought me to my knees. And you know, it turned out to be, because thankfully I'm here, I'm healed, a total miracle through the prayers of so many people, especially about 500,000 people in Uganda praying for me. But the reason I'm bringing this up is because I came face to face with my own mortality last year. I realized, and I had to realize, in talking with my wife and my 2 teenage sons, that I could have died. And the question I asked myself so many times, how did I live my life? Had I done enough? Had I done the things that I had been talking to so many people about doing? Or were they just this long list that said, I'll get to them next week, next month, or next year? Last year, I realized that there might not be a next month, next year, or beyond. And so I started to think, when we have an opportunity, whether we're in our 60s, 70s, 80s, or 90s, to bless somebody with the gift of water, don't delay. Don't wait. Realize that one gift of one donation, whether it be a well, a restoration well, a gift of stock, or mentioning and putting Wells of Life in your will, that's going to be your living legacy, as you said. It's going to ring true in eternity. We're not taking anything with us, because we all know there'll be no U-Haul behind our hearse. Joe O'Connor does not have a ball hitch on any of his hearses, I'm here to tell you. But I do know this, that when you bring the gift of water, it's a wonderful way to be remembered. And the last thing I wanted to touch on is that, you know, you mentioned about, you know, many people obviously are buried in a funeral plot, or they're cremated and their ashes are spread in their favorite place or whatever, sent to Ireland or the like. Now, we have probably 60 wells that are what we call memorial wells. They are rightly what you said, was they're living reminders of a person who has lived a wonderful life. Now, why do we put a plaque on that well? We put a plaque on the well because that mother, hundreds of mothers, want to know who blessed them, their children, and their families with the gift of water. Now, when we're gone, and hopefully we're in the right place,
Yes.
we don't need anything else.
Right.
But our loved ones mourn our loss because there's that empty space.
Yes.
What if you filled that empty space
With a
with
well.
a living memorial
So-
where I can tell you
Yeah.
that that family member can visit, and what they're going to see is this oasis of love, of outpouring of support, and truly of service in action.
Yeah.
I really get excited when I talk about a memorial well, because if everybody just said, I want a memorial well to remember me by, that would be the greatest gift that anybody could give. And I truly said to you this morning, there are probably, right this minute, there are 100 wells out here in the village just waiting to come in to bring the gift of water and life. And that's why I want to talk to everybody from my heart.
Yeah.
Because when I was healed after 2 surgeries, of 4 months of chemotherapy, of 25 bouts of radiation, I didn't take a second for granted, because I wake up every morning and I thank God for these extra days.
Yes.
And I promised, the same as I promised in Ginger, to tell the story about how easy it is to bring the gift of water, how important it is to bring water to those in need. And probably more excited, I'm excited to say, how fabulous it is what we receive in return. Because I have never seen a donor that didn't tell me, oh my gosh, I got so much more than I gave.
Yeah.
Now that is the beautiful dynamic of being of service to others.
Yeah. And when you were talking about the memorials, and I know one of those that are fairly recent is the Kobe Bryant memorial that's there. But I also know my dear friend Ruth, that when she bought a well, that it was for her husband, my favorite pastor.
Yes.
That was for her husband and her granddaughter that had gone on before. So there's a memorial there. Right. But that's what you say. It's a wonderful thing to leave a memorial there that they may or may not visit, but they would have a picture of it so they could say, this is what my parents or my mom or my dad.
Well, that life lives on.
Yes.
And lives on in the most alive and vibrant way. You know, there's a beautiful little oasis. There's a big tree, actually, where my mother as well, she lived to be a wonderful 89 years old.
Okay.
She was, and I believe still is, the inspiration behind Wells of Life. And she's the mother that carried the water, had the little boy walking beside her. And that I got to spend the last 4 days of her life with her. I was in Africa. I thankfully got a call from my brother. I changed my plans. I went and sat by her bedside. And I got to, of course, joke with her that said, now, Mom, you know, you're the inspiration behind Wells of Life. And my mom was a very quiet lady that didn't say an awful lot. And she eventually said, now listen, son, why don't you just go back to getting some more wells? And by the way, put my name on one. I'm fine. I know where I'm going. And you have some work to do. We hugged. 3 weeks later, she passed. And my wife and boys, we went to her funeral. And that little well, I think about it often, because the plaque on it has a little Bible verse on it. And it's deeply personal, because it connects me to my mom, to those that are in need, and to be able to honor her. Because again, I could quote you from Proverbs, you know, when you honor your parents, it's the greatest gift that you can give them is to honor them. And what better way to honor them than to dedicate a well in their memory?
Again, that whole living, the part that it goes
memorial.
On, the living memorial, because it goes on when it goes through it.
Hi, I'm Anthony Cairns of the Irish Tenors, and I want to introduce you to a gentleman, Pete Callahan, my friend. This man is dedicating his life to Wells of Life, raising money, raising awareness and needed funds to provide clean water to families and communities in Uganda. Please support us. Thank you.
Well, my name is Peter Callahan. I'm 70 years old. I've been practicing law for 50 years. I was designated one of the 100 most influential lawyers in California, and I was pretty satisfied with what I thought was a very successful life. I met a fellow named Nick Jordan, who explained to me his involvement and his formation of a charity called Wells of Life. And he told me that if I were to give him $6,000, every penny of that $6,000 would go to the drilling of this well in rural Uganda. Well, I have been burned by various charities over the years. So I said, Nick, I'll tell you what, I'll give you $6,000 to drill that well in Uganda, and I'm going to go to Uganda and see that well. And if it's not there, when I come back, I'm going to put you in jail for a long time, and I'm going to close down your charity. I wrote that check that I promised him, and I went to Uganda. What we saw basically changed my life.
Globally, water consumption is a serious problem. It's estimated that 1.1 billion people don't have access to sufficient water. Of all the continents, Africa is the one facing the greatest challenges over water.
Leaving residents to walk long distances in search of water, as is typical in many parts of Africa.
I wasn't sure what to expect from Uganda. We landed in Kampala, a modern city, but started out to the rural areas where we drill our wells. As a matter of fact of life in a rural village, you have to have water. And if there's no well, a water source, then somebody has to walk, usually a long distance, to that water source. And that water source is usually going to be a surface well water that is usually contaminated by animals and things like that. We ran across this elderly lady who was carrying water on her head, and she dropped down on her knees and raised her hands and said, God bless you, and explained to me in a very joyous, happy way how this was going to change her life, that her daughters and her grandchildren would be able to be mothers, and the kids could go to school and they wouldn't go blind from the dirty water. It really struck me, because when we drill a well and bring water to a school or to a village, it changes the life, it changes the dynamic of the 1,000 to 1,250 people that live in that village. I don't see this as a charity that I'm trying to help. I see the faces of those kids that are counting on me to help. And if I don't do it, what if I can't get you to help me do it? What's going to happen? The kid's going to die. And that's on my watch, because I was there, and I know what can be done. These people are our brothers and sisters, and they need our help. You've probably heard the statistic that there's 1 billion people in the world lacking clean water. There's actually a great deal of clean water in the world. The problem is it's underground. We've managed to perfect a technique that a well can be drilled in Africa for $6,000. Help us take that program to the next level. I am willing to travel anywhere, anytime, to talk to anybody that is sincerely interested in assisting us in this program. Join me in accepting this challenge, because we have a system that works. One well at a time, we can change the world.
For coming. This has been, I didn't think I would have to tear up here, but I do, because it is such a beautiful story. And the fact that you've been what you've been through and come out of it, that, because I remember seeing you at Scripps and everybody was praying for you, but we get updates on Facebook of what was going on. So for you to, because you're still needed so much to keep passing on the message of the need for water in every country, but right now you're doing it in Uganda. So thank you. God bless.
Thank you so much, DJ. It was a pleasure and an honor to be here. Thank you.